Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe below to get all of my new videos and hit the bell icon to make sure they hit your notifications as soon as you log into YouTube. Thanks. On October 19th, 2021, Joe Rogan was in the middle of the biggest controversy of his entire life. Rogan, long confined to the nether regions of society, mostly composed of mixed martial arts, podcasting, and stand-up comedy, was suddenly put in mainstream crosshairs. Never before getting any attention or invitation to participate in our gated institutional narrative, he now found himself utterly consumed by it. At the time, Rogan had just come out that after contracting COVID, he did not heal himself by way of vaccination. He had been offered to take it, but declined. Instead, leveraging his vast network of medical professionals and scientists, he had been given a cocktail of various drugs to combat the virus, which he claimed he overcame in a day. The part of the medicinal cocktail that got everyone's attention, the one that brought on the biggest attempted cancellation of an independent media figure to date, was ivermectin. Ivermectin, a long-used cancer drug that has been administered quite literally billions of times in both cancer and non-cancer related settings, was now medicine non grata. How dare you not get the vaccine, our chattering class touted. Don't you want to slow the spread? You could kill your grandmother, Joe Rogan. Put on your obedience mask and get the Fauci out, you uneducated gorilla. The attacks were immediate. Brian Stelter melted down on air about how CNN, who actually yellowed Joe Rogan's face in a clip, look it up, had quote-unquote departments and did quote-unquote research, whatever that means. A resurfaced clip conveniently appeared which painted Rogan as an unrepentant racist. Spotify centered his podcast with Drs. Robert Malone and Peter McCullough, the literal creator of the mRNA vaccine technology and the man with the most achievement in his field of study. This barrage, this absolute onslaught of institutional vitriol spit at Joe Rogan from all corners of our institutions, prompted him to start asking questions. Why did all of a sudden all the people who didn't care about the biggest media platform in the world suddenly cared about it? Why was ivermectin, a drug that was actually safe and effective, being demonized? Most importantly of all, why was it that the COVID vaccine, pushed out in a year where the normal process takes close to 10, if not more, the preferred medical treatment for a disease over something much more proven? While going down the rabbit hole, Rogan stumbled upon a stunning revelation, one that almost no American knew existed. The key to the Rogan cancellation, which opened up the door to many other gated questions about the COVID-1984 insanity era, was called the Prescription Drug Marketing Act of 1987. The act, passed at the tail end of the Reagan administration, by far the most pro-corporatist presidency in American history, allowed the United States to be one of only two countries, the other being New Zealand, to advertise pharmaceutical drugs on television, which leads back to October 19th, 2021. Rogan, in an act of defiance towards all parties who were trying to destroy him, posted a video on his social media that knocked the socks off of the millions who listened to his show. In what would later be dubbed the quote-unquote brought to you by Pfizer video, Rogan clipped together a nearly minute-long video of mainstream news organizations and institutional powerhouses shilling for Big Pharma. Every sitcom, every NFL game, every legacy media company was absolutely riddled with a nonstop deluge of pharmaceutical advertisements. And at that moment, the mask was officially off. Americans began asking themselves, is this really happening? Well, it was. Marketing works. Mass marketing, paid for by the biggest legal monopoly in the world, Big Pharma, and allowed by the U.S. government, works better. In 2023, for example, some estimate that pharma companies spent $13.1 billion on direct-to-consumer advertising. The goal, well, as with any business, to make you consume their product as much as possible. This strategy has been an immense success for Big Pharma. As of this writing, over 70% of American adults, including me, by the way, are hooked on at least one pharmaceutical drug. Nearly half take 2, nearly a fourth take 3, and nearly an eighth take more than 5. It might not be cocaine or marijuana, but Adderall, Ozempic, and Vyvanse, sign us up, we said. Americans over the last half century have become a nation of prescription drug addicts. What effect has this had? For starters, how about the complete neutering of our young boys with ADHD meds? The nuking of our young women with birth control medication, which, as people like Dr. Sarah Hill have pointed out, we still have absolutely no idea what their long-term effects are. The opiate crisis, which in partnership with black tar heroin and fentanyl from the Mexican drug cartels and the Chinese Communist Party, is directly responsible for the murder of 100,000 Americans a year. Say nothing of our obsession with vaccines, by the way, which have been the gateway drug for all the other carnage that have followed them. But thankfully, Americans are starting to wake up. Since the COVID era, Big Pharma has taken a massive and well-deserved hit. more Americans than ever are asking questions we should have been asking all along. What is this doing to us as individuals, as communities, as a society? Who really controls the conversations around them? Why do we seem to have such an unending dependency on drugs to just have us get through our days? Have we really outsourced our responsibility for our health and wellness this much? This, as personified by things such as the rise of the Make America Healthy Again movement, is a very positive step in the right direction. But there is another addiction that Americans need to break as well, one that is, in my opinion, even more ingrained and more taboo than our addiction to pharmaceuticals. The reason? Because at my core, I'm actually not anti-pharmaceutical or prescription drug. I believe Americans should have access to these drugs if they need them, as I do for a seizure medication. I'm not pro-suffering for suffering's sake. I'm anti-monopoly, anti-predator, and anti-drug if that drug has no usage. Period, point blank, and full stop. But by contrast, this cultural addiction that I believe is far worse than our addiction to prescription drugs has no value whatsoever. It hijacks the worst instincts of the human brain and exploits it to destroy careers, families, financial stability, marriages, mental health, and society at large, if you can believe it or not. It has no utility to that society, to our society, at all. Unlike pharmaceutical drugs, there is no purpose for it in our society, even in a controlled and justified, whatever that means, environment. Unfortunately for all of us, it's one that runs far deeper and one that has far greater access than any of us would like to admit. Gambling. Americans have had always a gambling problem. We have always had a gambling problem. The Italian mob used it, for example, as one of the biggest levers to flood our streets with crime, drugs, and murder. It was used to help create the prostitution industry. The overwhelming number of people who gamble are not on solid financial footing, which causes them to get desperate and risk it all by placing more bets. For all of our cultural brainwashing and conditioning to the contrary, gambling from all standpoints is an unquestionable net negative to society. The Texas Family Project, who have been warriors on this issue of the dangers of gambling, have successfully radicalized me to this issue. Some of the data they shared surrounding gambling is appalling. Up to 20% of all bankruptcies come from gambling addiction. To finance their addiction, most take out credit cards or payday loans. Problem gamblers are 15 times more likely to commit suicide. Around 45% of divorcees in one study said that gambling played a role in their separation. They increased their odds of child neglect and spousal abuse. And this is particularly true when it came to the industry that perhaps more than ever was as American as any other: sports. Sports gambling, from the alleged fixing of the 1919 World Series to Muhammad Ali boxing matches to Joe Namath's guarantee in Super Bowl III up to the World Series that just ended, has always been a black eye and specter upon all versions of America's pastime. But today's environment is different. Due to the incredibly lucrative advancements of direct-to-consumer gambling companies, you don't even have to go to a casino. You can just place your bets on your phone. Don't have big bucks to spend like you used to have? No worries. We'll take what you got. If you don't have it, you can put it on Affirm or Klarna or Afterpay. Just 4 easy payments with 18+% interest, and you can live like a baller too. This is particularly predatory for men, and especially young men. Men are the primary earners in most American households. For young men, particularly growing up in a social media-driven world, money is everything to them. It's how they attain social status, for example. It's how they attract women. It's how they can give their parents the middle finger. For the longest time, this dopamine rush, this unhinging of a door to fraudulent ambition and status, was rightfully closed to men, and especially young men. But now it's not, particularly among American sports betting. So why is this? Well, similarly to pharma, on May 14, 2018, the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act was shot down, throwing open the gates to sports gambling. Due to all that has happened since 2018, we have forgotten just how seismic of a shift this was. It was unfathomable, even 10 years ago, that gambling, particularly around sports, would have a chance to go mainstream. There was a reason why it was gatekept. We knew the consequences. But at some point, we decided that we didn't care. And like our conversation on prescription drugs, and like other things like rap lyrics and pornography, sports gambling has gone mainstream. The reason for Pat McAfee's miraculous ascendance was largely due to the financial backing of his biggest sponsor, FanDuel. Rob Gronkowski and Chris Sims make live betting parlays on Sunday NFL pregame shows. Fox Sports 1 and ESPN openly advertise gambling lines and attach them from everything to the morning crawl at the bottom of their television screens to live posting on Instagram as the games are unfolding. The new quote-unquote brought to you by Pfizer is now quote-unquote brought to you by DraftKings. Americans have not yet woken up to how deeply we have sunk into our new culture of rampant sports gambling. So just how far have we sunk? Well, since the law was legalized back in 2018, some estimates say the total market cap could apex at $120 billion by the end of the year. For context, Caesars Palace, which has been around for far longer and the most famous casino in Vegas, made around $4.5 billion in 2013. As for the U.S. sports market generally, the total market cap of pro sports is around $40 billion, making the sports gambling market 3 times as large. This is astounding to comprehend. It's not unlike our modern-day financial system. The financialization of the U.S. economy, to me, is one of the great evils of our modern world. Instead of doing what all productive economies do, actually making quality products and services, we now simply try to optimize old products and services. Instead of building new homes and buildings, we bundle them together and sell them as investments. Instead of incentivizing competition and entrepreneurship, we continue to pour trillions of good investment into bad and old companies, illegitimately propping up markets by staving off competition. Instead of lowering the barriers of entry for startup capital, we have raised the bar so high that almost no one can find a way to break in with traditional financing. And we have now done the same thing with sports. It's not about optimizing for the product in the field anymore. It's not about player improvement. It's not about how they can make the game more safe, which therefore means the best players play more often. It's not about how to rid the game of rules that are nonsensical and stupid. Instead, it's about betting lines, over-unders, and what the specific point spread is going to be. Winning by itself isn't enough anymore. We have now traded the means of the game for the end of the game. Never a good thing to do in any scenario. Which leads me to the blockbuster FBI bust that happened 2 weeks ago. On October 23rd of this year, and ironically a little bit more than 4 years after Rogan's Brought to You by Pfizer video, FBI Director Kash Patel announced something unprecedented. The conclusion of a 4-year-long investigation, which began under the Biden administration, had come to a close. That morning, the FBI moved to take action. And those actions were definitive, shocking, and swift. Overnight, a total of 30 people got knocks on the door from federal law enforcement and were escorted away in handcuffs. All of them had been surveilled for years, a meticulous case being put together for anyone and everyone involved in what many deemed an unforgivable offense. A sportsman rigging the sport he played for financial gain. On this point, and potentially the most shocking of all, the scandal included several big names. Chauncey Billups, for example, the active head coach of the Portland Trailblazers, was taken into custody after coaching a game from the sidelines the night before. The same was true of Damon Jones, another longtime assistant coach who'd worked closely with LeBron James. On the player side, the most notable address that we know of so far was Terry Rozier, a role-player guard for the Miami Heat who had once been disciplined with the Charlotte Hornets prior for gambling issues. And if you played close attention, we could all probably have seen this coming. The arrest of Jontay Porter and the expulsion of him from the NBA was a canary in the coal mine, as was Rozier's earlier suspension. But Chauncey Billups, a former All-Star and Finals MVP who had an all but sparkling reputation in the eyes of, well, everybody, Damon Jones, 27 others whose names haven't been released yet, Explosive doesn't even begin to cover it. In addition, this goes far beyond what most of the issues allege, mostly cheating in poker, which is obviously bad enough. This involves, particularly in the case of Terry Rozier, throwing games, putting your team in a position to lose. If Billups and Jones are found out in the same category, which I believe that they will be, this means that in an institutional level, 2 men charged with directly helming massive sports organizations have deliberately watered down the product on the court, causing direct harm to fans, the employees of the organization, the other players, and so many other parties. Disgraceful doesn't even begin to describe it. Much is still to come from the fallout from the scandal, who is implicated, and what's to come from it. But at this point, it is very much clear. This scandal goes far beyond the ones of old, such as players for Jerry Tarkanian's UNLV team in a hot tub with a bookie. This is a systemic, top-down corruption from some of the highest levels of sports leadership. For all who think that the NBA scandal is the bombshell, you're wrong. It was only one in an entire house of cards. Don't believe me? How about some more potential examples? What even was the officiating throughout the Auburn-Georgia game earlier this year, for example? Why is officiating across all sports, but particularly college and NFL football and probably NBA basketball, given the suspension, both gotten more complicated and by extension far worse over the past couple of years? Why are kickers, oftentimes the barrier between a bet being made or missed, seemingly worse off than ever? Why did the Calvin Ridley scandal get swept under the rug so quickly? And I don't know the answers to any of these questions definitively, by the way, and I don't believe many people do, maybe including the FBI. But my guess would be the following. The NBA gambling scandal is at the very bottom of an entire house of cards. There will be more busts like this, and very soon. Many more people will be implicated. There will be no sports league that is left unscathed. Professional sports and, due to the NIL, college sports are both filled with corruption, greed, and rot. It's only a matter of time before everything gets revealed. So, given all of this, what's the root cause? How has this been allowed to happen? The answers of all of these questions and more have the same root cause: gambling, and America's collective addiction to gambling. Like internet pornography and rap lyrics, it has been mainstreamed. And like internet pornography and rap lyrics, they have caused incalculable damage and harm to our society at large. The only proper response to the NBA gambling scandal, and what we're going to be devoting this entire show to, is the following: a reckoning. A reckoning, a decisive and swift judgment on one of America's most important institutions, is the only thing that can solve this. Punishment must be handed out. An example must be set. Leaders of these institutions must stand firm and set the tone to uphold one of the only things that Americans can set aside our differences for in our current day. So what does this reckoning look like? Lifetime bans for each of the offenders, for starters. RICO cases against all players, coaches, support staff, officials, and everyone else involved. Lifetime sentences in federal prison for defrauding fans and sports organizations. A declawing of the sports media landscape, by the way, and how they helped enable this through advertising dollars and inflated sports commentary. Oh, and while we're at it, an all-out ban on sports betting and on gambling in the United States in general. If we don't, the consequences will be dire. American sports have been long conspired against as being quote-unquote rigged. If all American sports leagues do not put a stop to this right now, fans will have no reason not to believe that they are indeed rigged. Players and coaches will continue to cheat. Most importantly, the fans will lose out. And they have been the losers in all of this from the very start. Many fans of professional sports are from predominantly non-wealthy households. Oftentimes, it is all they have for entertainment. It's a sin that the rich and powerful in our culture, in this instance athletics, have robbed them of that. This can't stand. Sports are too important of an institution in America to be corrupted at this high of a level. Unfortunately, I believe they have been, and for a very long time. America is only as strong as its institutions. If its institutions fall, then people lose hope. It's not just about sports. It's about something beyond sports. As LeBron James has made popular to say, it's about more than just a game.